Mohon izin Bapak Ibu yang terhormat, kami ingin menginformasikan untuk tim show management yang on duty akan take a short break for 5 minutes. Setelah itu kita akan kembali untuk standby di ruangan. Terima kasih.
Cek satu, dicoba cek satu.
May we have your attention, please, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you all and welcome to this Grand Ballroom of Aruna Senggigi Resort and Convention, Lombok, Indonesia. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to kindly invite for all of you to please kindly join us here in the ballroom and please be seated. We would like to also greet for those of you who join us virtually, a very good morning and a very beautiful day from Lombok, Indonesia. For those of you who join us virtually, please also be reminded with all of the schedule today. And of course, we do hope that you will be able to join us here in Indonesia in the near future. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to also kindly request you to kindly turn off your cellular phone or other communication devices during the meeting, or you may also set it into the silent or vibrate mode. Thank you.
Audio check, check. Uh, Cek audio. Sebenarnya itu kejauhan juga tapi udah di set itunya ya kabelnya. Katanya
May we have your attention, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The agenda of our meeting will start shortly. Therefore, we would like to kindly request you to please be seated and let us prepare ourselves to start the arrangements. Thank you. May we have your attention, please, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. As His Excellency the Minister of Health of the Republic of Indonesia is already joining us here in this ballroom, we kindly request you to please be seated and let us prepare ourselves to start the arrangements. Thank you. His Excellency Bapak Budi Gunadi Sadikin, the Minister of Health of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of World Health Organization, who joined us virtually this morning, Honorable to Bapak Kunta Wibawa Dasanugraha and Bapak Ronaldus Mujur, the co-chairs of the Second Health Working Group, distinguished G20 delegates, invitees, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam sejahtera untuk kita bersama, salam kebajikan, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, Monday is a perfect start and also a fresh reminder that offers us a new beginning 52 times a year. So in this beautiful Monday, we are also very happy and very honored to welcome you all to Lombok, Indonesia, for the second health working group in conjunction with the G20 Indonesia Presidency 2022 in the spirit of Recover Together, Recover Stronger, and Building Global Health System Resilience, the 6th to the 8th of June 2022. Let us now give applause for all of us here. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The outstanding scenery of the Senggigi Beach greets you a warm welcome to the island of Lombok, Indonesia. And the word Lombok itself is a word that derives from the Sasak language, or the local language of the Lombok people. If it is translated into Bahasa Indonesia, the word Lombok means lurus or straight. And Lombok is also a lesser used word for chili in Bahasa Indonesia, which has led many people to believe that the island is named for its spicy cuisines. So be careful if you try the local or the traditional cuisines of Lombok later on during the lunch and also during the dinner, but of course you have to have a try. However, ladies and gentlemen, this morning we will now start the meeting, and we are also very happy to be able to greet you in person today here in Lombok, Indonesia. So we do hope that you enjoy our hospitality here, and for those of you who join us virtually, we hope that you may be able to attend a meeting in Indonesia in the near future. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dian Ariswari, your MC for the last 2 days until tomorrow. Before we start the agenda, please be advised that the hospitality arrangements on this meeting. This place, the Aruna Senggigi Resort and Convention, has implemented the international standard of health protocol to ensure your convenience and also your safety. Our meeting today will be in plenary setting, and the coffee and snack will be provided free flow in the foyer area of this room. Ladies and gentlemen, later on the lunch will be provided at Pandan Restaurant near the lobby. It is the same restaurant where you enjoy the breakfast for those who stay at this hotel. If everything runs well, we plan to conclude the whole agenda by 5 p.m. local time, and it will be continued by informal dinner and also the casual social night at 7 p.m. Before we continue, let us now focus on the screen for the safety measures and also policies of this venue. Please enjoy.
Tamu yang terhormat, selamat datang di Aruna Senggigi Resort and Convention. Kami mohon perhatian Anda selama kami membawakan prosedur keamanan, keselamatan, dan protokol kesehatan. Aruna Senggigi Resort and Convention berkomitmen penuh untuk menjalankan protokol kesehatan guna menjaga kenyamanan dan keamanan Anda. Kami menerapkan standar tertinggi untuk kebersihan dan telah menerima sertifikat CHSE dari Kementerian Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif Indonesia. Kami juga terus memastikan kenyamanan dan keamanan Anda selama acara berlangsung, mulai dari tahap persiapan sebelum acara dimulai hingga acara selesai dengan menerapkan physical distancing. Sebelum acara, ruangan disterilisasi dengan disinfektan dan UV treatment. Kursi diberi jarak untuk memastikan bahwa aturan physical distancing tetap terjaga. Sebelum memasuki ruangan, staf kami akan melakukan pemeriksaan suhu tubuh. Kami juga menyediakan hand sanitizer yang dapat Anda gunakan setiap waktu. Selaras dengan kampanye menggunakan masker, pastikan Anda selalu menggunakan masker selama acara berlangsung. Makanan yang kami siapkan telah memenuhi standar keamanan pangan dan dipersiapkan secara higienis. Karyawan kami sudah divaksinasi dan melakukan swab antigen atau PCR secara rutin. Saat ini Anda sedang berada di Grand Ballroom Aruna Senggigi Resort and Convention. Grand Ballroom Aruna Senggigi Resort and Convention dilengkapi dengan 9 pintu keluar. Pintu keluar darurat ditandai dengan tanda exit atau keluar yang akan tetap menyala walau dalam keadaan listrik padam. Jika Anda mendengar bunyi alarm, tetap tenang dan jangan panik. Luangkan waktu Anda untuk mengidentifikasi pintu keluar terdekat dari sisi Anda. Tetap tenang dan jangan lari. Jangan menggunakan lift atau eskalator. Jika terjadi gempa bumi, segera berlindung di tempat kokoh sesuai dengan prinsip segitiga kehidupan. Setelah gempa reda, segera keluar dari gedung dan menuju titik kumpul. Jika terjadi tsunami, segera menuju ke titik kumpul yang lebih tinggi. Utamakan keselamatan ibu hamil, orang dengan kebutuhan khusus, dan lansia. Kesehatan dan keselamatan Anda adalah prioritas utama kami. Atas nama seluruh manajemen dan staf Aruna Senggigi Resort and Convention, kami berharap acara Anda berjalan sukses dan menyenangkan bersama kami.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the global health system has vastly expanded over the past few decades, and therefore, in concerns about the global health, has focused the attentions on the global health architecture to provide a stronger collaborations for the health emergency preparedness, response, and also resilience. And now, we are pleased to invite our chair for this meeting. Without further ado, Bapak Kunta Wibawa Dasanugraha, please lead the meeting.
Bismillah. Thank you, Budian, the MC. His Excellency, Minister Wahid of the Republic of Indonesia, distinguished delegates, first and foremost, welcome you all to the second Head Working Group meeting in Lombok, Indonesia. Lombok is an island located in West Nusa Tenggara, famous for its beautiful Mount Rinjani National Park and spectacular underwater scenery. At the end of our meeting, all delegates will be invited to experience Lombok more closely through our social event. I hope all of you will enjoy your stay here in Lombok. Like you know, my name is Kunta, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Health of the Republic of Indonesia. We'll be co-chairing this meeting together with my colleagues, Pak Ronald, the Senior Advisor to the Ministry of Health. Distinguished delegates, since taking up the presidency, the Health Working Group has been making progress in discussing our priorities. In the last Health Working Group in Yogyakarta, we have discussed harmonizing global health protocol standards, which received general support from all members. In today's meeting, we will discuss our other priority, building global health system resilience. Like you know, that the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the weaknesses in our health system, and it is necessary for us to draw on the lesson learned in dealing with the pandemic to strengthen our global health system for our future. To build a stronger global health system resilience, we would like to invite the members to discuss 3 important issues within the second Health Working Group. First, the G20 Driven Financial Intermediary Fund, or FIF, for Prevention, Preparedness and Response, or PPR. Second, we need to pursuing a more permanent structure for developing and ensuring equitable access to medical countermeasures for future health threats. Third, we need to optimizing the data sharing related to epidemic and pandemic potential pathogen. On the other hand, we are also honored to have the Indonesian Ministry for Health His Excellency Budi Gunadi Sadikin, who will deliver his remark to guide us in today's session. His Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pak Kunta, for all delegates, ladies and gentlemen, honorable speakers. Welcome to Lombok Islands. Lombok Islands is very famous because we have the second highest active volcanoes in Indonesia called Mount Rinjani. And Mount Rinjani, based on my record, has the largest eruptions in the 13th century, and then created a second biggest crater also in Indonesia after Lake Toba, called the Segara Anakan. And this is the most powerful volcanic blast since humans being learned to ride. So this beautiful Mount Rinjani and also the crater is something that you have to see when you have time after this meeting. And it is also the greatest examples that only through great earthquakes, lofty mountain rises. So for every crisis, there always open a huge opportunity for us to improve the human beings. And that is also the reason we are sitting here again, because we as global health leaders, after the great pandemic, one of the greatest, I believe, in the last 100 years, we are being called upon and to do something concrete and deliver to the global people that have been waiting for us to see us doing some concrete actions. The president, our president in the G20 meetings would like only to have 3 agendas. The first one is global health architecture. Second agenda is energy transitions, and the third agenda is digital economy. And I'm responsible for the first agenda. And he is a very practical man. He wants to see concrete results. He is not a man that's satisfied with a joint statement. Leader's job is not to meet and discuss. Leader's job is to make decisions and move forward. So he gave me 5 deliverables that we need to deliver. The first one, and the first 3 is grouped into one single agenda. The first one is he really wants to see the sources of fund, I call it, or the pandemic fund being created, being established. And to be honest, it is not our idea. It is the continuations of Italian presidency that at the end of the Italian G20 leaders meeting, we couldn't make it. Couldn't make the agreement. And thanks to our colleague from World Bank, WHO, and many other financial institutions, that we have been successfully agreed to establish this fund. And we also successfully lobby major G20 countries at least not to against the establishment of this fund. I think that is the biggest achievement. Agreed not to against the establishment of this fund. My only note for people that are being involved here, I'm a banker for 30 years. Bankers, whatever you name it, if you have any institution with the bank's word in it, is not a person that is ready to take a risk quickly. Bankers, including myself, are not an individual or organization that ready to take risks quickly. And that is proven during this pandemic. While we have a lot of money, the money was not dispersed quickly enough with all organizations that have banks' name in it. It is dispersed quickly by countries like United States, United Kingdom, because they have to disperse the fund before even the vaccine we understand whether it is successful or not. And as a formal banker, I can tell you that is not the risk that any bankers is willing to take. So as an ex-banker again, when we establish this fund, Pak Kunta, make sure the governance is there. If the governance is following the standard global development banks or any commercial bank standard, it will not happen. The fastest institution in disbursing billions of funding during my career in several crises is the IMF, because they can disburse billions of funds in weeks. But the other financial institution that we have, it takes 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and it's being late. Because why? Because it's very common. We are bankers. Before we disburse money, we will ask 1,000 questions. And when you ask 1,000 questions, then it will spend 365 days or 700 days, then it has been 2 years has been passed. We are lucky that we have countries that is willing to assume the risk and disburse the fund quickly, giving 1 billion each to whatever companies that they believe they can do it. Whether they come up with the result or not, it is a secondary issue. But the question of assuming the risk is something that we need to clearly consider in the establishment of this fund. Because otherwise, that will be another pool of fund that we will never be able to disburse promptly during the crisis. So that is my first note. But we already established this mechanism of sources of fund, and I strongly agree it has to be located in an institution that understands how to source the fund, replenish the fund, and leverage the fund to have the size that is appropriate enough to be used. The second deliverable is very, very critical, is the uses of fund. When the fund is already established, now we have to use it. And this is where the conflict will be. And that is, I think, Pak Kunta, the biggest job. The second biggest challenge for us is sit together and make sure we agree on how and who will use the fund. We have agreed on the sources of fund. We have to address the issue on risk assumptions, but then we need to talk about the uses of fund. And I'm a very practical person. The best uses of fund during the pandemic is being shown by COVAX Gavi. ACT Accelerator is the umbrella, and we thank for that. We need to formalize that one. But some of the initiative in ACT Accelerator during my experience is not quite successful. On the therapeutic side, on the diagnostic side, it's not successful. The one that is very successful is on the vaccine pillar, which is done by COVAX Gavi. So rather than we establish something new, why don't we reinforce and strengthen this mechanism? Make it formal. ACT Accelerator is not formal. COVAX is not formal. But we need to follow what has been done by those group of people, Global Fund, Gavi, SEPI, UNICEF, whatever it is, WHO in this organization, with WHO leading this one, because WHO is the international organization that understands, but make sure we involve the existing organizations, because they are the one that has shown they can do it. So rather than designing something new, and we don't understand whether it works or not, and never being tested or not, then why don't you just being practical and use what experience that we have done before, formalize it, coordinate it, consolidate them, and then let them work. Those great institutions have done many things to save world life. And let's acknowledge what they have been doing so far. Let's acknowledge what they have been doing so far. With this amount of money, it is very critical for us to make sure the uses of fund, and we can split whether peacetime and wartime, is being designed properly, And that is the biggest challenge. The third topic, which is the same group, is we need to also to agree how to connect the genome surveillance data. And this is, again, it is a very contentious topics, because everybody understand that this can be monetized, this can have a lot of value, and this can control everything, so everyone want to have control in it. Again, I'm a very practical person. Let's use what we have seen and working. I just met Peter Bochner like a year ago. But to be honest, G8 is the one that make it works. Can we make another one? Yes, we can. But are you sure it's working? There is no proven example that it is working. I understand that there is geopolitical interest, economic interest, monetization interest, power interest here and there. But we are talking about humanity here. How can we make sure that all of this initiative, Gene Bank in the United States, we have BioHub in UK BioHub, we have the Europe BioHub, but at the end of the day, what important is whether the scientists trust you or not. If we create something, but the scientist doesn't want to put the data in it, what for? What for? So that's why, in my opinion, I understand we cannot say no for the establishment for this hub, but let each of them have this initiative, but the connection is a key. And building the trust, how this genome surveillance lab can connect to each other, from my perspective, after meeting in Lake Como, initiated by WHO, is still a gap. It's still a gap. We need to establish trust between this institution for them to willing to share and connect data, because it is important for all of us. At least we do it during the pandemic. But if we can do it during the peacetime, it also will be wonderful. But ladies and gentlemen, the trust level is very important. If we are approaching this with the competition's perspective, not collaboration perspective, it will not happen. If we approach this not from the humanity perspective, but from potential power or economic perspective, this will not happen. So that's why, Pak Kunta, the third deliverables, how we connect this genome surveillance lab, again, my view, let's establish the connections. It is possible to merge them into one. And let's focus on the scientists who they give the trust the most. Because whatever we establish, we say that we want to control, coordinate, but if the global scientist doesn't want to submit the data, that will not happen. That will not happen. So talk to the stakeholders if you have a great ideas. And my suggestions to the people that involved in these activities, talk together, eye to eye, and settle all differences, build the trust, and hopefully we can establish this global genome sequence lab connections very, very soon. And the fourth deliverables is also moving forward, and thanks to member of G20, especially in the European Union, that we also need to establish the standard health protocols. We realized that during the pandemic, the lockdown is the health program initiative to overcome this pandemic. What happened is our economy become chaos. Because economy, the movement of money is always following the movement of goods and services. If we stop the movement of goods and services, then the movement of money is always stopped. How good we are in terms of doing business activities virtually, it's still only 20% or 30% of the global economy. Most of the economy happens with the physical movement of goods and services. So that's why establishing a global health protocol standard where people or ships or whatever it is that can still move because they are following a certain standard is very, very crucial. So when lockdown happens, or for this pharmaceutical ingredients, you can still move. For this people, health workers, you can still move around. As long as you meet a standard health protocol is important. And we need to make the agreement upfront and make the procedure as easy as, when you normally travel in the immigrations using passport as the only documents and also immigration process as the only process. We have agreed to use a WHO standard QR code to include the information about vaccine and testing requirements. Maybe we can expand this not only for movement of people, but also movement of goods. So when the next pandemic happens, when we need to impose lockdowns, at least we have a global health protocol standard that for this particular movement of people, of goods and services is still being okay. Because we make sure that the standard is being fulfilled. By doing that, in the next pandemic happen, our economy doesn't stop 100%. There's still some movement, especially for emergency medical countermeasures. Number 5, which is not, number 4 and number 5 is not in the target of this meeting. The target of this meeting is number 1, 2, and 3. Number 5 is we have also to make sure that we redistribute the global manufacturing and research hub, ideally for vaccine therapeutics and diagnostic, especially to the global south countries. Because we believe whatever agreement that we have, if we don't have enough distributions of center of manufacturing, and we can start with vaccine first, it is impossible, to have an equitable distributions of these emergency medical countermeasures. And thanks for WHO that has been established South Africa. We just need to make sure that the executions, the realization is happening. It's not only that we plan to do it. I know that Brazil and Argentina, we have been discussing with them. PAHO will also develop mRNA vaccine technology there. I believe in South Asia, so we have one in Africa, southern country in Africa, southern countries in America, and maybe in Asia, India, Indonesia, we are ready. We will do it bilaterally, and the discussion is moving on, but at least if we have in Global South 4 centers, global center for manufacturing, that will put a stability for the emergency medical countermeasure requirements if the next pandemic happens. But what I need help from developed country is make sure it's not only the manufacturing side, but also the research capabilities is also being established. I remember I watched a movie called World Zombie, whatever it is, when suddenly the zombie attack United States, all the scientists become zombies, you need another scientist working in other countries, right? I remember at that time they moved to Israel. But then again, the zombies finally enter Israel. So you have to have something in Brazil, Indonesia, India, especially Indonesia is very remote. When I see the movie, I rarely see that zombie can swim that far. So at least it will be good that we have some redistributions of global, not only global manufacturing, but also global research. So ladies and gentlemen, as we have seen with Mount Rinjani and Segara Anak Lake, great earthquakes and large disruptive volcanic eruptions often happen quickly, yet make lasting changes to their surroundings for centuries. COVID-19 crisis will soon pass too. I do believe our time window to make lasting changes in global health architecture is narrow. So it is our collective responsibility as health leaders of the world's largest economies to seize the moment now to build a more resilient global health systems. Stronger global health architecture will be our invaluable legacy, the Rinjani of global health, which emerged after a deadly pandemic that will protect and better prepare us for future health crises. For the health and well-being of our children and the children of our children, I thank you and have a wonderful meetings.
Thank you, Minister, for clear guiding in this meeting. Now I will invite the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, to deliver his remarks. Please, Dr. Tedros, the screen is yours.
Excellency Minister Budi, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, Selamat pagi, and thank you for the opportunity of sharing a few thoughts with you today. COVID-19 is an unprecedented global crisis. We must learn the lessons this pandemic is teaching us because history tells us that it will not be the last one. Even as we work to bring this pandemic under control, we must put in place the measures to prevent and prepare for future pandemics and mitigate their impact. Drawing on the findings from multiple independent reviews of the pandemic, WHO has developed a proposal for a stronger global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. In brief, it includes 10 key recommendations for stronger governance, stronger systems and tools, stronger financing, and a stronger WHO at the center of the global health architecture. Overarching all these recommendations is the proposal for a new international instrument which is now being negotiated by WHO member states to provide the framework for closer cooperation and coordination between countries in the face of global threats. Such an international instrument will be an important complement to the international health regulations which govern the global response to health emergencies. We're also working jointly with the World Bank on the design of a financial intermediary fund, FIF, to provide catalytic and gap-filling funding. As G20 leaders have proposed, WHO must play a central role in the FIF by leading its technical work to direct investments in global health security and boost country capacities to implement the international health regulations. A finance and health ministers platform could bring coherence and efficiency across domestic and international investment, health emergency preparedness and response. I commend the political priority of the Indonesian G20 presidency to establish a permanent mechanism for effective and equitable deployment of medical countermeasures, building on existing mechanisms such as PEEP, Framework, and ACT Accelerator. We also propose expanding the WHO Contingency Fund for emergencies to ensure rapidly scalable financing for response. Key to pandemic preparedness efforts is improving surveillance through genomic sequencing. The success of this effort depends upon genomic data being shared in a timely manner. WHO has developed principles for pathogen genome data sharing, inputs from countries, and other stakeholders. The advanced draft of the principles were shared with you all before this meeting, and we look forward to continuing to work with G20 leaders to improve global health security, international financing, and genomic sequencing, and only by working together can we build a safer, healthier, and fairer world. I thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros. So today we already have got a clear guiding from Minister of Health of Republic Indonesia and from Dr. Tedros. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that Excellency Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin will stay until the end of the opening session. With that, I wish to invite all Troika colleagues to deliver the opening speech onto this topic. First, our friend from Italy, you may have the screen for 3 minutes remarks. Please.
Thank you very much, Minister Sadikin, to you, to the Indonesian presidency for organizing this second health working group and the approach to the G20 ministerial health meeting later this month, and to Dr. Tedros for his insightful remarks. Before discussing this meeting's issues, I'd like to reiterate that Italy condemns in the strongest possible terms Russian unprovoked and unjustifiable aggression against Ukraine, which is causing an intolerable loss of lives and includes attacks on healthcare facilities. The Russian Federation military aggression is a blatant violation of the fundamental principles of international peace and security and the breach of international law. It was underscored by the overwhelming vote of the United Nations General Assembly and recently of the World Health Assembly. Now, we think that the topics suggested for this meeting are very appropriate. In the Rome Declaration last September, G20 health ministers provided an analysis of the socioeconomic consequences of the pandemic in terms of retreat from the goals of sustainable development. COVID has widened the differences between and within nations, affecting vulnerable people, groups, and regions. Now, the combination of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine risk to precipitate the world in one of its deepest recessions ever, heavily affecting the most fragile countries, including through an alimentary crisis of unknown proportion. It is therefore crucial to reaffirm our commitment to recovering the lost ground in terms of health-related SDG targets, and in particular to advancing health for all through universal health coverage. We are convinced that we need to reinforce the global health architecture and governance in order to address challenges and strengthen partnerships for global health emergencies under the leading role of the WHO. The G20 Finance Health Task Force is working in order to establish a better and more permanent coordination between finance and health, and we shall listen in the next session to the important results achieved during its first meeting and our expectations in view of the health ministers meeting in Jakarta. Second, improving international protection and response to pandemic emergencies also needs an equitable distribution of vaccines, medicines, and diagnostics. This challenge can only be won if we are able to develop common global strategies to support the research, development, and an equitable distribution of countermeasures. We need to recognize extensive COVID-19 immunization as a global public good and increase our commitment for all collaborative efforts in this direction, including the diversification of vaccine manufacturing capacity through technology transfers. A reflection on how to overcome fundamental weaknesses revealed by the COVID-19 with regard to current PPR mechanisms for countermeasures through a global platform is therefore more than welcome. Third, our experience indicated that the response against COVID-19 was most effective to the extent the health systems had available resources in terms of tools, facilities, and personnel. Our understanding of the importance of a well-trained and dedicated health workforce and of digital data sharing, starting with genomic sequencing, is another lesson learned from the pandemic. In this respect, we agree with the strategic importance of overcoming inequity in the access to genomic sequencing capabilities, and we look forward to our discussions in one of the next sessions. This is all from me. Thank you very much. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Italy. India, now you may have the screen, please.
Thank you, Chair. His Excellency, Honorable Health Minister of Indonesia, DG WHO, Chair of Indonesian Health Working Group and senior officials in Troika from Italy, and distinguished delegates. It is indeed a great pleasure for India to welcome you all to the G20 Indonesian Second Health Working Group at Lombok as part of the Troika. We are glad that we are meeting at a time when it appears that the COVID-19 is relatively controlled and the end of current pandemic appears near. The ongoing pandemic has thrown multiple challenges to the health system across the world, developed and developing countries alike, and has brought to fore the importance of examining our respective countries' health systems, health workforce, service delivery, and examining the existing global health architecture like never before. During the first Health Working Group meeting, we had discussed how important it is to build a travel trust network and mutually recognize the vaccine certificates by harmonizing the global health protocols. We also discussed that how G20 platform could serve as a precursor for setting these standards and in bringing uniformity and interoperability to cover all aspects of health using technology. Chair, India commends the effort of G20 Indonesian presidency for prioritizing building global health system resilience as the second priority. Building global health system resilience through developing global mechanisms for pooling, access, and mobilization of essential medical countermeasures and improved global genomic surveillance are pertinent and critical issues for action. With G20 countries accounting for 80% of the world's GDP, G20's engagement and leadership will be vital to building global health resilience. India strongly believes that the centrality of WHO in any form of global health architecture and the need for bringing transparency and accountability in WHO functioning, besides need to work towards financial sustainability of WHO. WHO, to that extent, should be facilitated by G20 for making it reform so as to fit for purpose. A strengthened and empowered WHO should be at the core of global health architecture. Chair, India agrees the world needs a more inclusive, coordinated, agile, and responsive global health architecture, supported by a global mechanism for pooling of resources, sustainable financing, equitable distribution of medical countermeasures, and increased capacity for global surveillance. However, it should also be ensured that there is no duplicity or fragmentation by introducing new mechanisms with overlapping mandates. India recognizes the need for supporting existing initiatives such as COVAX and ACT Accelerator. India is on board with Indonesia on the proposal that G20 countries should support lower and middle income countries in responding to future health threats by specifically supporting them in terms of a more resilient and sustainable national health system. India looks forward to the next 2 days, wherein we as G20 members are able to have fruitful peer learning experiences and engage on how best can we achieve a concrete deliverable on the second health working group priority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. Please take the applause. Thank you to our Troika colleagues for their remarks. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Excellency Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin will have to leave the meeting room to proceed with other important engagement. I therefore ask the meeting to adjourn for 1 minute to allow time for the Minister to proceed.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will have a conference outside, but I will be moving back and forth inside because I'm very curious to listen what is this meeting is progressing. Thank you.
Thank you so much to His Excellency the Minister of Health of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Budi Gunadi Sadikin. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we will now continue the meeting and still lead by our co-chairs, please.
Colleagues, now we will move to the first session that will be led by Mr. Yodi Mahendra Datta, who is sitting beside me. Over to you, Pak Yodi. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Kunta. Excellencies, distinguished guests, distinguished delegates, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yodi Mahendra Datta. I'm currently acting dean at the Faculty of Medicine, Public Health, and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia, and I have the pleasure and the privilege to moderate this session. Distinguished delegates, as mentioned by the co-chair earlier, today we are going to discuss the issues on building global health system resilience. Now we're stepping into the third year of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are now in the process of recovery. However, there are challenges and inequalities on countries' capability to recover from this pandemic. While some countries do have access to adequate financing and health resources to respond to health crisis, many do not. This is something that we have to address to ensure that we will recover together and stronger. Beyond improving the financing and health resource access, we also realize the importance of a rapid, systematic, and consistent access to whole genome sequence data. A global genomic data sharing platform has played a critical role in the rapid discovery and development of vaccines that have saved lives through this pandemic. Therefore, today's agenda is crucial in our common effort to strengthen the global health architecture, as we need to develop concrete outputs for Indonesia's G20 presidency, in the hope that this output will help countries, not only G20 members, but all countries in the world, to effectively deal with the current and future pandemics. Distinguished delegates, this morning we are honored to have experts and international organization professionals to present their perspective on our priority issues. First, we have Mr. Scott Pendergast, Director for Health Emergency Strategy, Programs and Partnership of WHO, who will be delivering a presentation on the topic of global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. Mr. Pendergast, welcome. We are glad to have you here today in person. Second, we will have Sir John Bell, Regius of Medicine, University of Oxford, who will be explaining about building a resilient health system to prevent disease and improve preparedness for future pandemics. Welcome, Sir John Bell. Third, we have Dr. Fifa Rahman, Civil Society Representative on the WHO Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator Facilitation Council. She will be delivering her presentation on essential health resources, mobilization mechanism, and the importance of low and middle income countries' participation in moving forward. Dr. Fifa, we're happy to have you here. Fourth, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Chief Scientist of WHO, will be sharing with us implementation of functional data sharing platforms for global genomic surveillance and pathogen genomic data sharing to detect future health threats. We're looking forward to hear a presentation, Dr. Swaminathan. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like now to call Mr. Scott Pendergast from WHO to provide a 15-minute presentation on the global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. Mr. Pendergast, you may have the floor, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. Can I please have the slides? So this morning I'll be covering the proposals of the Director General for strengthening the global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. Next slide, please. In January, in the Executive Board for the WHO, member states requested the Director General to work in consultation with member states and partners to develop proposals around strengthening the global architecture for health emergency preparedness, response, and resilience. This is in the backdrop of increasing risk of outbreaks and epidemics and pandemics due to environmental degradation, rapid urbanization, international travel, but also in the increasing climate and geopolitical crises where we now have nearly 300 million people in need of humanitarian assistance for health. In May, at the World Health Assembly, the Director General presented a report for strengthening the global architecture. Next slide, please. This report drew from multiple reviews of COVID-19 and is aligned with many ongoing consultation processes. The reviews include the International IPPR, the High-Level Independent Panel, the IHR review, and other reviews that have taken place, as well as being aligned with the processes around the intergovernmental negotiating body for the Pandemic Accord or the International Treaty, the Working Group on Strengthening Preparedness and Response, the G20 processes, such as this one, as well as G7 processes. Overall, there's an emerging consensus of the system gaps highlighted by many of the reports that need to be addressed together with strengthened financing and governance, and that's the structure of the report. But overarching that, in the middle of this, is the need for equity, both in terms of access and outcomes during health emergencies, inclusivity in terms of the governance of all stakeholders, and coherence with existing systems and frameworks. Next slide, please. The 10 proposals are grouped under governance, systems, and financing. Under governance, under the overarching Pandemic Accord. In governance, there's discussions around the establishment of a Global Health Emergency Council at the head of states level, both at peacetime and during emergencies, to ensure the highest level of political commitment and spanning across multiple sectors beyond health. There's also discussions around the establishment of a Committee on Health Emergencies at the WHO to specialize and look at specifically health emergency-related items. In terms of regulation, there's proposals around amendments, targeted amendments to the international health regulations to address issues that were found during COVID. And in terms of accountability, strengthening peer-to-peer country review through the universal health and preparedness review mechanisms, as well as strengthened independent monitoring, such as the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board. In terms of systems, it's really looking at strengthening capacities for health emergency alert and response to have rapidly deployable teams that are based on national capacities but are interoperable and scalable during emergencies. Strengthened standardized approaches for coordinating strategy, financing, operations and monitoring of emergencies, both for preparedness as well as response, as well as expanded partnerships and strengthened networks for collaborative surveillance, community protection, clinical care, and access to countermeasures. In terms of financing, there needs to be a strengthened coordination platform for financing to increase domestic investment in health emergency preparedness and prevention, as well as make more effective use of existing financing and development financing for preparedness. There needs to be rapidly scalable financing for emergency response through a contingency fund for emergencies, as well as catalytic and gap-filling financing through an expanding the amount of financing available through a new financial intermediary fund. Next slide, please. These systems need to be grounded in a whole of government, whole of society, one health approach, because the causes and the impact and solutions for health emergencies go well beyond the health sector, including social welfare and protection, economics and finance, animal health and agriculture, environment, and the broader humanitarian and disaster management within countries. Health emergency preparedness and response doesn't stand alone as a vertical pillar in health systems and social systems. It needs to be grounded in resilient health systems, grounded in primary health care, health promotion, and health security, so that when we're actually building the capacities for health emergency preparedness and response, they're being built from ongoing one health system. And this needs to be done at the community level as well as the national level, because all health emergencies begin and end in communities. And that's where we need to be able to first detect and first respond. Next slide, please. Next slide. In terms of the systems, there's really 5 interconnected systems and core capabilities and solutions that are required. And many of them have been mentioned by the Minister in his opening and are part of the G20 agenda today. First, we have collaborative surveillance and intelligence through strengthened national integrated disease, threat and vulnerability surveillance, increased laboratory capacity for both pathogen and genomic surveillance, as well as new interdisciplinary ways of bringing people together for collaborative approaches for risk forecasting, event detection, and response monitoring. We also need to have strengthened community engagement to be able to have proactive risk communication, infodemic management to inform communities and build trust. We need to have community engagement to co-create the mass population and environmental interventions based on local contexts and customs, as well as multi-sectoral action to address broader community concerns such as social welfare and livelihood protection. We need to have safe and scalable emergency care that can respond and scale to emergencies as they happen, with proper infection prevention and control that protects patients and health workers and communities. And this needs to be underpinned by resilient health systems that are able to maintain essential health services during emergencies. As was mentioned this morning, one of the key to this is also having equitable access to countermeasures and essential supplies. And this is going to require fast-track R&D procedures with pre-negotiated benefit-sharing agreements, scalable manufacturing platforms and agreements for technology transfer so we can scale up and scale out manufacturing for greater access, as well as coordinated procurement and emergency supply chains to ensure equitable access during emergencies. These systems need to be brought together through strengthened emergency coordination, including the rapid response teams, a coherent approach to national action plans for preparedness, prevention, risk reduction, and operational readiness, as well as scalable health emergency response coordination through a standardized and commonly applied emergency response framework, both within countries and between countries. Next slide, please. These systems need to be both connected horizontally within them, but also vertically between the national, regional, and global level. They also need to be connected across all of the emergency management cycle, from preparedness to prevention to detection to response and recovery. Next slide, please. Looking at work that we did together with the World Bank based on reviews that had happened before, there's an estimated financing need of 31 billion per year for health emergency preparedness and a gap of 10.5 billion per year. The majority of the financing will need to be at the national level with the total need of 26 billion and a gap of 7 billion, supported by effective global and regional capacities with a total need of 4.7 billion and a gap of 3.5 billion. As mentioned before, this gap needs to be filled primarily through increased domestic financing, but also more effective use of existing development financing and programs that are already happening. And the fifth can then also act as more of a catalytic part of bringing that financing together for global solutions. Next slide, please. The next steps on this are to continue to working together with member states and partners to accelerate the implementation of the 10 proposals. This is including the member state processes of the International Negotiating Body, the Working Group on the IHR amendments, and the G20 and G7 processes as we're discussing today. Under the G20, many of the items, including the fifth, the genomic sequencing, the permanent platform for countermeasures are already there, and under the G7 processes, under the Pandemic Readiness Pact, is really looking at collaborative surveillance and rapid response. There's many partners within this global ecosystem that need to be brought together to find these solutions across these different areas. And we also need to transition from COVID-19 into this medium-term increasing preparedness and response for emergencies. as well as looking at utilizing the financing that's been gained during this period, as well as new financing that will come on board together with the World Bank and other multilateral development banks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prendergast. Ladies and gentlemen, may we welcome now our second speaker, Professor Sir John Bell. Professor Sir John Bell will be delivering his speech on building a resilient health system to prevent disease and improve preparedness for future pandemic virtually for 15 minutes. Professor Sir John Bell, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me here. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I tested positive before I got on the plane, so I'll have to visit you on another occasion. I wanted to talk today about how we think about building a resilient health system with a focus on two things. One is, how do we use genomics to take a wider view of genomic surveillance and how we share the data that emerges from that genomic surveillance, but also to think about how we utilize some of the assets that have been generated from the COVID pandemic to actually develop a more systematic adult vaccination program. Next slide, please. So looking back over the past couple of years, I, with my colleagues at the Global Health Security Consortium, have been involved in a number of the challenging issues, and mostly with a strong scientific base. As you know, I was involved in developing the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Tamsin Berry, who's in the room today, and I were both involved in developing the ONS epidemiological survey in the UK, which tracked the pandemic. We were also members of the UK testing task force. And Derek Crook, who's been developing some of the genomic surveillance capabilities, was the one who led the lateral flow testing program in the UK. So we've now been thinking about the role of genomic surveillance in an adult vaccine program. Next slide, please. It's also, though, worth thinking what's actually happened and how we can use that to prepare for the future. So there are a couple of key points here. One is we were lucky